Good evening, and welcome to Daddy Book Theater. Tonight we are reading Seven at One Blow. Rah! Wah! Okay. Pimpkin the tailor was sewing a suit. It was a fine June day. Jam! Said Pimpkin, sticking his needle into the cloth. Bread and jam for summer lunch. He went to the kitchen. He spread a slice of bread and began to eat. Then through the window came the flies, drawn by the sweet smell of the jam. One landed on his nose. He swatted at it. Ow. Another tickled the top of his head. Slap, he killed it. But more flies were buzzing about him, trying to taste his jam. The little tailor picked up a piece of cloth. He waited until the number of flies had settled on the table. Then, with one smack of the cloth, he squashed them. 7, he cried. 7 in one blow. Nobody in the village has ever done such a deed. He was so pleased with himself that he got out some leather and some red and yellow cloth, and he stitched and he sewed, and when he was done, he had on a belt with the words 7 at one blow. He made a belt with the words 7 in one blow. This place is too small for a bold man like me, he said. I must leave it and go in search of my fortune. He began to pack. He didn't have much. He packed scissors and some socks, 2 handkerchiefs, and a tape measure. He put a piece of cheese in one pocket, and in the other pocket he put his canary, because the cage was too big to carry, so he thought he'd put the canary in his pocket. I wouldn't recommend that, though.
Yeah.
Then he shut the door behind him and started off into the world to find his fortune. After a long time, he came to the land of Barton Rattlesmere.
Rattlesmere.
Yeah. When he walked into town, people stared and pointed to his belt. Soon the Baron himself came riding down to meet Pimpkin. Greetings, said the Baron. You are just the man I'm looking for. I am, said Pimpkin. How nice. 7 at one blow, said the Baron. Splendid. A great reward is waiting for you. Is it? Said Pimpkin.
It is, said Pumpkin. That is it.
It is, said Pimpkin. And all you have to do is one little deed, even smaller than killing 7 at one blow. In the forest, there's a giant who's pulling up our trees and using them for firewood. Go and rid him, and the reward is yours. But, said Pimpkin. Good, the Baron said. He agrees. Hurrah, shouted the people. They rushed forward, picked up Pimpkin, and carried him on their shoulders out of town, up the hill to the edge of forest, and then they left him.
Yeah.
Pimpkin picked himself up and dusted himself off, because they threw him on the ground, which wasn't nice. Well, he said, I may as well go and see what this giant looks like. I know that giants are big, but they're also very stupid. Perhaps I can get the best of them.
That wasn't very nice.
That's true. He set off walking through the woods. Soon he came to the edge of a clearing. There on the ground sat a giant. He was 3 times as high as Pimpkin, and he was eating a sandwich. Next to him was the oak tree, which he had pulled up by the roots.
What?
Ho!
Ho!
He roared when he saw Pimpkin. Who are you?
I am your mom.
As bravely as he could, Pimpkin replied, Do you see this belt? I am he who killed 7 with one blow. I have come to ask you to stop pulling up Baron Rattlesmere's trees. Giant is pulling up trees. Bad giant.
Yeah, trees.
They don't like it when they pull up trees.
That
The giant rose to his feet and stared down at the little tailor. Miserable mite, he said. Do you know who you're talking to?
No, I don't.
I am Giant Grim.
Grim?
He picked up a rock. Holding it in the palm of one of his hands, he hit it with the other and it split in two. Oh, said Pimkin, I don't think so much of that. He slipped the piece of cheese out of his pocket and pretended to pick it up from the ground as if it were a stone. Holding it in the palm of his hand, he hit it with his fist and mashed it flat to bits. I wonder if he's going to eat the cheese later. Giant Grim blinked. Then he said, watch this. He picked up another rock and threw it in the air. Up, up, up it went, and when it was almost out of sight, then it fell with a thump. Thump. Watch this, said Pimkin. And he took the canary out of his other pocket. I wonder what the canary thought about being in the pocket. But in any case, he pulled it out of the pocket, pretended to pick it up from the ground as if it were a stone, and he threw it into the air. And the bird said, I'm free of the pocket now! Yay! And the bird flew and flew higher and higher and higher until it vanished.
There's only 2 hires.
Said the giant. You're more of a man than I took you for. Well, come home with me and we'll talk this over. Just help me carry this tree. Certainly, said Pimkin. You carry the roots and I'll carry the branches, which are bigger. Giant picked up the tree and held it over his shoulder by the roots. Pimkin jumped into the branches where the giant couldn't see him, and there he sat comfortably. Are you ready? Called out the giant. Go ahead, said Pimkin. I'm holding my end. And away the giant went carrying the tree, Pimkin and all. Soon they came to the giant's house. There Pimkin hopped down from the branches. Aren't you tired? Asked the giant, mopping his forehead. Not one bit, said Pimkin. They went inside and the giant showed Pimkin a bed as big as a tennis court. I'm going to take a nap before dinner, said the giant. You take a nap as well. Fine, said Pimkin, jumping onto the bed. But as soon as the giant had gone, he jumped out again. This bed is far too big for me, he said. He rolled up his coat and put it under the blanket. Then he curled up in a dark corner. Soon the giant came tiptoeing into the room. It was like a horse tiptoeing. You ever heard a horse tiptoe? But it was like a horse tiptoeing. In one hand he held an iron bar. 7 at one blow, muttered the giant. I'll have to destroy this fella before he can harm me. He's stronger than I thought. He lifted the bar and hit the bed just where Pimkin's coat lay. With a crash, the bread broke in half.
The bread?
The bed.
He killed the bread.
The giant broke the bed. The giant broke his own bed.
Oh, well, that's
That
sad.
finishes him, said the giant. He went to the kitchen and began to fry an elephant for lunch.
Wait, it does say that.
In walked Pimkin. Hello, he said. A mosquito just bit me and woke me up. When do we eat? With a scream of fright, the giant rushed out of the house and away, never to be seen again. Pimkin went back to the town of Baron Brattlesmere. When the Baron heard the giant Grim was gone, he gave Pimkin a horse, a bag of gold, and metal. Everyone applauded as Pimkin rode on his way again. Soon he came to the land of Lord Lurgan. When he rode into town, he was greeted by cheers, and Lord Lurgan himself came to meet him. Baron Brattlesmere has sent me a message about you, said Lord Lurgan. You are just the man I am looking for. But, said Pimkin. Don't be modest, said Lord Lurgan. We know all about your bold deeds. Just go to the riverbank. There you'll find a giant who's catching all my fish. Get rid of him and you shall be rewarded.
Why do they not like giants?
I don't know. Oh, well,
Giants are
Pimkin
just-
said to
they
himself,
try
I
to eat
suppose I
fish.
better try. Big and strong, but maybe small is smarter. And out loud he said, I'll see what I can do. Off he went to the banks of the wide, swift river. There he saw a giant who was so big that Pimkin barely came up to his knees. He was fishing from the shore with a rod that had 50 lines on it, each line with 10 hooks. When he saw Pimpkin, he put down the rod. "Who are you?" he said in a voice that was like grinding of stones. "Where are you?" "I have come to ask you to stop fishing in this river," said Pimpkin. "Meddlesome midget," bellowed the giant. "Do you know who I am? I am Giant Grum." "Is that so?" said Pimpkin. "Do you see this belt? I am he who killed 7 at a blow and chased away Giant Grim."
Hey, go to the other side of here. There's no room.
The giant turned a little pale. In a quieter voice that sounded like gravel being poured out of a bucket, he said, "Let's not quarrel. Sit down and fish with me and we'll talk things over." But to himself the giant thought, "The first chance I get, I'll push him into the river." Pimpkin said, "I need a fishing rod. Just bend this big tree over so I can get a hold of the top and pull it up." The giant bent the tree. Pimpkin seized a branch. "Let go," he called. When the giant let go, the tree snapped up straight. It flung Pimpkin into the air. High he sailed, right over the river, and landed on the other shore. "Hey," the giant bawled. "What did you do that for?" Pimpkin called back. "The fishing is better over here. Jump over the way I did." "If you can do it, so can I," said the giant. He took 2 giant steps, gave a great leap, but he was so big and heavy that he couldn't jump far. He landed in the middle of the river with a splash. Giants can't swim, so Pimpkin watched him drown.
What? That's just mean.
When Pimpkin returned to town, he was treated as a hero. Lord Lugan gave him a splendid suit of clothes, 2 bags of gold, and a hat with an ostrich feather. When Pimpkin rode away, everyone cheered. Soon he came to a city where the king lived. He was met by soldiers who took him to the palace. There sat the king.
The king.
"Welcome," said the king. "Baron Brattlesmere and Lord Lugan have sent us messages about you. You are the champion we need." "Thank you, my lord," said Pimpkin with a bow.
welcome.
"There's a small task for you here," the king went on. "Do it, and you shall have half the kingdom and the hand of my daughter in marriage." He gets his daughter's hand. Ooh. There stood the princess beside the throne. She was fresh and lovely as a May morning. When she smiled, Pimpkin felt dizzy because he knew she was going to lose her hand. "What's the task?" he said. "One that will be easy for a man like you," said the king. "Go to the broad meadows beyond the city. There you will see Giant Graham. He's been standing there for 6 days trying to make up his mind, for giants, as you know, are very slow." "Make up his mind about what?" said Pimpkin. "Whether to stamp on our city or jump on it," said the king gloomily. "Whether to stamp on our city or jump on it,"
What?
the king said sadly. "I'll see what I can do," said Pimpkin. He rode to the broad meadows beyond the city. There stood Giant Graham, leaning on an iron club as big as a church steeple. He was so big that the little tailor only came up to the soles of his boots. Pimpkin tipped back his head and shouted as loudly as he could, "I am he who killed 7 at one blow, and chased away Giant Grim and drowned Giant Grum." But the giant was so big he didn't even hear him. Didn't even know Pimpkin was there. He just went on standing with his mouth open, trying to make up his mind. Here he is. He's trying to decide. There we go. Pimpkin sat down on a stump. Oh dear, he groaned.
I'm stumped.
I'll never manage this one. How I wish I had never opened that jar of jam in the first place. Then suddenly he remembered how it all had begun. He jumped up, snapped his fingers, for the idea had come. He rode back to the city as fast as he could. There he brought a long, strong, but slender rope, a hook, a knapsack, and 22 jars of jam. Then he galloped back to the meadow. He packed everything in the knapsack. Then he began to climb the giant. He climbed up the laces of the giant's boots until he came to the giant's socks. They were pretty stinky. He climbed them up. They were really stinky, but he climbed up the socks till he came to the giant's trousers. They were even stinkier.
Oh, God.
They were rough and wrinkly and stinky, but he forced himself to climb up them. He then came to the giant's coat, which was pretty grimy. It was shaggy, had fur all over it, but it was easy to climb. When he got to the pocket, he sat on the edge of it and he rested in the giant's pocket. After a bit, he started on once again. He climbed the rest of the coat and came out on the giant's shoulder. The giant had long, bristly hair that hung down his collar, and Pimpkin shimmied up one of the hairs to the top of the giant's ear. From there, he climbed another tuft of hair until he was standing on the giant's head. It was like standing in a field of tall, thick weeds. Softly and lightly, he walked to the center of the giant's head. He got out the jam and emptied all the jars. Put the empty jars back in the knapsack. He tied the hook to the end of the rope and climbed back down the giant's hair to the collar, hooked onto the collar, and slid down to the ground. Soon, bees and wasps began buzzing around the giant's head. The flies joined him, first by the dozens and then by the hundreds they came. They landed on the jam and sipped it and buzzed hungrily. The giant fidgeted. He stomped his feet. He gave a terrible roar of annoyance. And slapped his head with all of his might. But he was forgotten that he was holding the iron club in his hand, because giants aren't that smart.
Yeah, bro.
This just is very stupid.
Thump went the club, and down crashed Giant Graham with a noise like 33 earthquakes. And it was the end of him. When Pimpkin told the news to the king, all the bells in the city rang, and everyone danced in the streets, except for the king's daughter, who they put her hand on a stump, and a man came with an axe and cut off her hand and gave it to her guy and was told, "You're going to marry this hand." Ah, he flipped out. Oh my God, and he was forced to marry the hand, and he and the hand lived after the way. It was really sick. It turned into like a skeleton hand later, and like he married it. It was pretty gross, but
Can he
yeah,
get divorced?
he left giants alone after that. He didn't mess with any giants, but like he had a freaky hand that he would carry around. Like, this is her hand.
Oh, it must be really weird when they say you may now kiss the bride.
Yeah, and that's the end of this book. I hope you enjoyed Daddy Theater.